Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll get started. First of all, thank you all so much for taking the time to learn more about Contentstack Launch. My name is Lloyd Layton. I'm on the global sales team at Contentstack. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dean Haddock, who is the product owner for Launch. Really looking forward to our introduction today. In terms of agenda, I want to keep my intro short and sweet. If you're on today's call, there's a good chance you're familiar with Contentstack's industry-leading headless CMS. Today, we're going to introduce you to Launch, our front-end hosting solution, and the latest product in Contentstack's family of products. As the industry's only true composable DXP, we do whatever we can to make going composable easy for our customers, which obviously starts with our industry leading CMS Contentstack, our marketplace, our automation hub, and as a true headless API first CMS, obviously when it comes to front-end hosting, our customers have a lot of choice and flexibility. To make it even easier for our customers, earlier this year we announced our product launch, which you're going to get to see today. But yeah, it's meant to really help streamline all of your content operations and help you launch content faster. Also, one of the things we noticed is when you're assembling a CMS, a headless CMS, or a composable DXP like Contentstack, obviously there's a lot of choices, and a lot of times we find customers are paying for things like support and SLAs, which they obviously get with Contentstack as a product. So yeah, also designed in a lot of cases, Launch can be very cost effective as well. We see customers saving upwards of 50%. So yeah, with that, I'll pass things over to you, Dean.
Thanks very much, Lloyd, and thanks everybody for being here today. I'm very excited to show you this very cool front-end hosting product that we released earlier this year. And again, as Lloyd mentioned, there'll be ample time for questions at the end, and of course, we're always happy to do a follow-up call with you if you want to learn more, or you have a specific use case that you would like to talk with us about as well. And before I share my screen here and kick this demo off, I just want to say we were a really fantastic engineering team as well. We were there supporting our customers as they go live on Launch as well. So if you are doing something unique and you have specific architectural questions related to front-end hosting, want to talk about strategy and that sort of thing, we're also there to help you with that as well. So please feel free to lean on us for that if you need to. So without further ado, since we only have a half hour today, I'm going to go ahead and dive in here and share my screen. Here we go. Can everybody see my screen? Maybe Lloyd, you can give me a thumbs up. There you go. Okay, great. So this is my employee organization. If you're new to Contentstack, you just know that what you see when you log in might be a little bit different depending on what your stack is, how many stacks you have, and your specific organization use cases. But for today, I'm going to be using this Hello Launch stack right here, which I'll come back into in just a moment. If you are navigating in and around Contentstack, you'll see over here our left-hand menu. Launch is the rocket logo here. And once you click on this logo, you'll see all of the Launch projects. Launch is project-based. So essentially the way we think about it is one project is essentially what you need for one site. Now, there are lots of different ways to configure front-end hosting, and different organizations might have different needs with respect to what environments they set up. If you're new to all those things, don't worry, it'll be old hat by the time I'm done with my demo. But just know that what I'm looking at right here are my different projects. So you could think about this as my individual sites, but also know that within each of these projects, there might be a production environment, a staging environment, a preview environment, which all might have different URLs associated with them. So without further ado, let me go ahead and go through my demo here And just like very quickly at the top, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a project and I'm going to be deploying two different environments to it. One of them is going to be a production site. So think of that as like contentstack.com would be production. No, I'm not going to be deploying directly on Contentstack's website today. I'm going to be using a demo site. And then I'm going to be also deploying a preview site, which you might think of as like a staging site. Now I'm going to be using a demo starter application using Next.js that you could download and access from Contentstack's public GitHub repository. And I'll be using our starter stack, which you can install from the marketplace here from the command line interface. So the demo that I'm showing you today is something that you could actually do at home as well. And again, if you have any questions or you are working through the demo on your own and you need to reach out for help, please don't hesitate to do so. Here we go. I'll click New Project over here. And right here off the bat, you see we have the option of importing directly from Git or uploading a zip file. I'm going to be importing from Git. So I've already gone through my my OAuth flow to connect my GitHub account, but if you were doing this for the first time, you might see a couple of extra steps there to authorize access. And Contentstack is looking for my different repositories here on my specific GitHub account. So let me just go in here and select the ContentCon launch demo for today. Again, this is leveraging our Next.js starter app. I've made a couple of little adjustments, but overall structurally, it's almost identical. My changes to it are almost completely cosmetic. So just know it'll look a little bit different than the one you might use, but it's leveraging the exact same code base minus a couple of CSS changes. So I'll select this branch, launch demo. I'm going to give it a name. We're going to call this Thursday launch demo. And I'll be deploying my production environment first. You're not required to do that. I like to say I like to live dangerously. So that's what I'm doing here by deploying production first. Notice Launch has already detected that the framework we're using is Next.js. It's automatically populated the build commands in the output directory. Now, if you were using a different framework or Gatsby, Launch does work with other frameworks, just so you know. But this is just auto detection. So it's pre-filling these variables based on the Next.js settings. If you were using another framework, you would just need to populate your build command and output directory on your own there. So this is where it starts to get fun though, because Launch is front-end hosting that is on the Contentstack platform. So we can do lots of interesting stuff like introspecting into other products and other parts of the platform. So here Launch is saying, let's connect to our stack. I'm going to use the Hello Launch stack, as I mentioned. And we've got this concept called delivery tokens, which I'll walk you through in just a moment. But notice here that I've selected the stack and I've selected the production delivery token and I click import variables. And this populates all of our API keys and other environment variables that our Next.js app is looking for. So I click deploy and we're off to the races. Launch is now going to GitHub. It's pulling in the GitHub repository. It's running that build command. And once the site is ready, we're going to see it on this URL right here. Notice our deployment logs here are also populating. So this is going to just give output on the screen, letting us know that our Next.js build is successful. While this is happening, we're not going to sit here and watch the deployment logs go by, but they'll be here when we come back. I'm going to go ahead and go over and deploy a preview environment simultaneously. So when this is done, we'll have both production and preview environments with URLs ready for us to use. So click back. I'm going to say new environment. And since we've already got a connection with our GitHub repository, this screen looks a little bit different. We're starting with our environment name. So I will say preview. You could use staging. You can call it whatever you want to. It will pre-populate that URL, just so you know, but you can change that later. So it's not something that's set in stone. I'm going to use the same branch, but this is where you might decide that you have a production code base for your production site and a staging code base for your staging site. That's where you might select your different branches. I'm using the same branch, but The differences in my production and preview environment are going to be on the content side. So this is a very interesting use case as well. Say you have a legal team that has to do review before content goes live. You could create an isolated environment for that particular team using the same code base, but only content that is for legal review before it goes to the step of publishing. So again, all of my presets are there. This time I'm going to select the preview token. Notice I don't need to select my stack. One project, roughly speaking, maps to one stack and one GitHub repository. So that's why we say one project in Launch is roughly what you need for one site. I'll click Import Variables and Create. And now we're simultaneously building two different sites. So we could see our production site is still deploying. If we click in here, we'll see that our deployment logs are still going and my build is still completing. It'll be done probably in about 30 seconds. While that is completing and wrapping up, let's go into the stack itself and show you a couple of things as to how this is configured. That way you could see the real power of mapping these delivery tokens and environments to these different launch environments. So again, this stack is our Next.js starter stack. This is something that is pre-populated with content models and content. I made a couple of changes again, just to keep it interesting. I do a lot of these demos, but roughly speaking, this is almost identical to what you would see by installing the starter stack on your own. So the first thing I want to show you here is that Contentstack has this really cool concept called publishing environments. So I mentioned environments already, but just note that these are different concepts for environments. Inside the CMS, and excuse me, one moment, I got to clear my. Inside the CMS, you can create a publishing environment, which is essentially like a publishing target of where that content is going to appear. Here I've got production, preview, and development. So this would allow me to select a target when I'm publishing an entry, and where that entry is published is specific to that environment. So if I only want to publish content to preview, I can do that and it won't appear on production. This is a very powerful tool, particularly when you have workflows and lots of different teams who might be contributing to a piece of content before it goes to production. What I like about this a lot is that these environments can then be mapped to delivery tokens. So I've got delivery tokens that are mapped to each of these environments, production and preview. You can ignore this token. We're not going to use it in today's demo, but this is what I'm talking about. So these publishing environments that we've set up appear here, and I can associate one specific delivery token with that one specific environment, meaning that when I publish content to the production environment on the Contentstack CMS, if I am mapping that delivery token to a specific launch environment, then I know that the content that's published on the CMS side environment is only going to appear on the launch environment. I don't have to worry about staging content ending up on production if that's my given workflow. So before I show you how what it looks like when you publish to each of those environments, let's jump back into launch and see if our sites are live. And it looks like they are. So let's look at our production site. That is our production site. Notice up here, part of our starter stack has this header up here. So I've gone in ahead of time and I've just made a note that in the header where I might say something like, oh, we're running a special for 50% off or something like that. I'm just leveraging that to help me remember which site is which, because both of the sites look almost identical, as I mentioned. And then I open our preview site and notice it says preview environment there. So we've got a production and a preview environment that are using those delivery tokens to show different content based on the CMS environment. So that is why you see preview environment here and production environment here. And if that seems a little confusing, I think it'll be very clear after this next step. So we've got our production and preview environments there. We click back into the CMS, my Hello Launch stack. And again, because it's our starter stack, a lot of this content has been pre-configured. Your particular implementation may look very different from mine. But one concept that we have in our starter stack is this hero image at top, which is defining this particular section. So if I wanted to check in my preview environment what this might look like if I change this text right here, and I only want to review that on preview, this is how I would do that. So I'm a native Texan. Contentstack has a headquarters in Texas, and Lloyd is in Texas. So I'm going to change this to Howdy Launch, and I'm going to click Publish. And I want to see what it looks like just on my preview environment. So notice I didn't check production, I didn't check development, I'm just selecting preview. Note that Contentstack also has roles. So I can set a particular user role, a group of users, to only have access to publish in a certain environment, which is very powerful when you think of teams that might contribute in different ways to a piece of content getting on the web. For example, I might have interns who are drafting a first pass at content, and I only want to give them access to like an intern environment. If I did that, they wouldn't even see these other environments. They would only see the environment that they have access to publish to. So I will now click Send, which will publish this content. I come over here to the preview site and I hit refresh, and it now says howdy. I go over here to production, I hit refresh. The change has not been made because I've told it to only publish on the preview environment. So for example, if I wanted to come in here and experiment with a different background color, I could do the same thing, publish that only to preview, and the background changes. I can change it back. We'll leave the howdy there just because I like it. And notice from this one entry, we've told it to publish different content in different ways to two different environments. Those environments are set up on launch, and on the CMS side, we've got publishing environments that are mapped seamlessly to those launch environments. So a couple other things while we're here. That's essentially how simple it is to set up your site. And again, this is using a GitHub repository that Contentstack provides, so you can access this from our GitHub repository. But I just deployed two different environments, made content changes, simulating a real world workflow. And I think I did it in just about under 8 minutes. So I'll show you a couple of other very cool features. And then if we have questions, we can take a few questions. First thing I want to show you is, so Contentstack is a platform with multiple products on it. And one of those products is also Automation Hub. And I'm very happy to announce that we actually just today have released a new feature. So this hasn't been announced publicly. You are literally the first people hearing about it. It hasn't even been announced internally on our team. But so we have, in Automation Hub, we have the ability to say, when an entry is updated in the CMS, kick off these events. If you're new to Automation Hub, just know it's an automation tool. It's very powerful. You can automate steps in your workflow. You can integrate with other third-party applications. It also integrates with ChatGPT. It's a very, very cool tool. If you're used to tools out there like Zapier, you'll find it very familiar. But what I've done here is ahead of time, I've got a trigger set up where when a piece of content is updated, I want it to do something. I want it to kick off this step. We have this new feature now. So we have, you could trigger a build. That was already there. That's old hat for us now. But we now have this ability to revalidate the CDN cache. When you're building a site with in the headless paradigm, it's very common that most of the performance that you're getting is on the caching layer. So you tell your site, you tell your application what content to cache and what content not to cache. If you've heard of static sites or static site generator, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. In the past, it was very common where sites were almost purely static. And now the paradigm is shifting a little bit to where some parts of the site are static because you don't update them very much, and some parts are more dynamic. The reason that the content change that I made was published immediately is because I have configured the Next.js application out of the box to use server-side rendering. So any changes I make on the CMS are automatically reflected on the front end. I could also implement my site in such a way that everything is statically generated and cached immediately. So you get very low latency from the users who are accessing the site. The problem is with a static site, purely static site, if you make an update to content and you want it reflected on the front end, that you have to rebuild your entire site, revalidate the cache. Well, not anymore. With this revalidate CDN cache, what I can actually do is I can pick my launch project. I can select the environment that I want to update the cache on. And then based on the URL of the entry, which is one of the features of the CMS, there's a title, there's content, there's the header that I showed you. There's also a URL for that entry. And that information comes across in this first trigger so that I could say, hey, wherever that entry is, go revalidate the cache on just that specific endpoint. So I don't have to rebuild my site. All I am doing is telling our CDN to say, hey, wipe that copy that you're storing on the CDN and replace it with this copy. This makes for very, very efficient workflows and extremely focused updates to your site, so that changes get reflected at exactly the time that you want to. Now, in order to make this work, you have to implement SSR or server-side renderings, and you have to overwrite the cache header, for your application. I haven't done that, so I'm not going to show you the complete workflow of how this works, but just know that whatever URL you put in here, as long as it's part of your front-end site, Launch is going to revalidate the cache. So whether that's every entry that follows /blog, or that's a specific URL for one site, you can revalidate the cache in that manner. And then last but not least, one more little feature I want to show you. When you are in here working through your launch environments, just know that there are settings, additional settings that I haven't demoed here today, such as you can go in here and update your environment settings. You can change and add new domains. So if you have a custom domain to add, you could add it there. You can set up deploy hooks. So if I create a deploy hook here, anytime that deploy hook URL gets touched, the site would redeploy. So that may be part of your workflow or something you want to kick off as an action following an automation hub trigger or from another application that you build, or say an upstream service like an inventory database, etc. You can update your deployment fields here, just like we did when we were creating the environment, and then you can password protect the environment too. So it's very common that your preview site or your staging site is going to be password protected, so it's not visible to the public. That's where you would make that setting there. So I think that pretty much covers our demo for today. Let's go ahead and open the floor to questions if we have any. And it looks like Atul is raising their hand. Yep, and I'm relatively new to the Zoom webinars, so Atul, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi Din.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome.
So I would like to know the pricing and whether it supports serverless and how it can be integrated with AWS workload to the backend.
Okay, so it sounded like we had 3 questions. We had pricing. We had, does it work with headless? Is that what you said was the second question? Or serverless functions?
Yeah, serverless.
Yep. And then the third question was AWS?
Yeah.
Ian, if you want to start with the second 2, and I'll get the first in.
Yep, so I'm a little unclear on the third one. So let me just answer the second question. Yes, serverless functions are built in. So you can use serverless functions just as you normally would with Next.js app. And the question related to AWS, I'm sorry, it's I don't know if it's my headphones, but I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Could you ask that the third one again?
Yeah, AWS as a backend, how does it integrate or supports? Do we have?
I see. Yes. So with Launch and with Contentstack CMS, you wouldn't need AWS to host a headless site. Launch handles all the hosting for you. So we run the build commands, we cache any assets at the CDN level, anything that's pre-rendered would be stored on storage on our network. So really, this is soup to nuts, everything you would need to deploy a headless CMS and front end. So no need to integrate with AWS, no need to have other hosting services out there if you don't need them.
Mhm. And whether this is HIPAA compliant?
HIPAA compliant?
Yeah.
That is a good question. I think we're gonna have to follow up on that one with you because there are a handful of things that go into HIPAA compliance, and I definitely don't want to answer incorrectly there. So we'll follow up on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then just really quickly on pricing as well, I think as Dean mentioned, we try to keep the pricing as simple and scalable as possible. So with that, you know, we measure it by what we call a project, and with that, I guess you know the pricing obviously, you know, it's economies of scale. So the more projects, the less expensive, you know, launches, and it's designed to be very affordable compared to other options out there for Contentstack customers. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to follow up with you separately, kind of learn more about you know which experiences you know you're managing, and we'd be happy to provide an accurate price for you.
Yep, I can also say that it is priced incredibly competitively with other solutions that are out there in the space. You know, if you find out differently, please let us know because we definitely want to be providing excellent prices for our customers. And just Atul, I did follow up as well in the chat with a link to our compliance page. So that might steer you in the right direction. And if not, again, please just reach out to us.
All right, sure. Chat is disabled. So you can reach me on my email.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Joel is next. Hi, Joel.
Hello. So I'm really curious how extensive we can get with a build process. Right now, our build process for creating our final build is quite involved. So I'm wondering, you know, what is the runtime limitations? What is the memory bandwidth? Anything like that you can expose to give us an idea of where the limitations might lie.
Yep, great question. So we do have some default limits set for projects. So for example, the build time is set to 60 minutes. However, those things can be configured custom given a particular use case. So I don't want to just rattle off limits because I would say you shouldn't let that deter you. There is a free tier of Launch that's available to all customers who currently have an organization. If you were to sign up for a trial, you would have access at that level. Know that the number of build limits, or excuse me, build minutes and those sorts of constraints are a little bit tighter on the free tier. So if you ran into any limits when you're giving it a shot there, you could reach out to us and we could, you know, increase those limits or have a conversation about how to optimize. So just know that we did build into this product the ability to fine grain and fine tune limits and entitlements to make sure that our customers don't hit any friction compared to other hosting solutions that are out there in the market. We're really trying to really just create as big of a container as customers need to do what they need to do and not be too punitive on any kind of limits or entitlements, things like that. So don't let that be a blocker for you. In terms of your build process, I'm guessing just by the nature of the question that you're using something that might be a little bit bespoke, where you have a number of different processes that get triggered as you're getting closer to your go live. Is that correct? Is it something that's kind of bespoke?
It's pretty involved. I mean, we have our own EC2 that we have a custom script that runs. It actually involves several different repos on the same server. to reach out to different repos, aggregate the files necessary to create a final build. So yeah, I'm just trying to see if there would be any restrictions or friction there.
That's a good question. You know, what I would advise there is perhaps it's a good candidate for a follow-up and chatting with our tech leads. You know, one of the challenges with a product like Launch is definitely that there are almost as many different flavors of implementation as there are websites in the universe. So it might be a combination of streamlining certain steps that we could advise you on, as well as, you know, clearly with Launch, it is as simple as connecting to a repo, connecting to your stack, and deploying your site. Now, there are a lot of things that might happen upstream, but when you're leveraging tools like Automation Hub, as well as considering that you could use one of your launch environments to run middleware, an application, an API, that sort of thing that might help and assist in that build process as well. There's a lot of different ways to skin this proverbial cat. So we'd love to chat with you about that and see if Launch is a good option. And again, there's a free tier available if you were to try the trial out. So you're welcome to do that. There's no cost in trying that out. I'm also getting the old cane pulling me off stage here. So I know there are some other questions, it seems like, out there, but I bet Gabby and Lloyd are making sure that we're going to be following up with you afterward.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all so much for your time today. We're going to follow up the questions that are in the chat. We will get back to you via email shortly.